Greetings, everyone. This is Payman Lorenzo, your host of the Lose Out Podcast. Today, I have a repeat, not just a guest, but a real dear friend of mine, Coach Randy Brown. We connected initially, almost 2 years ago to the
Yes.
circle. We did quite a few. We had a powerful talk right off the bat. And I said, listen, I have to bring you on the show. Even first time I heard you talk in the serving circle, I said, I need to connect with you and get to know your story. And wow, what a story. We've done 4 powerful, heartfelt conversation. I still remember those. And then you also were part of my first book in 2022. So really honored to have you add sharing
Right.
story there. And we've kept in touch since. And now we long due for as you call, not just episode 5, but game 5. So
Game 5. Yes.
basketball language. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm delighted. I'm honored that we connected, and I'm super excited for today. So Randy, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Payman, my buddy. Yes, it is. It has been a while since we did our last episode, but we have our ways of keeping in touch, which is awesome. I always enjoy that. And you introduced me to a phenomenal friend now in Snow over there in KL. And that's been a blast, forming that relationship with him. I have some things, have a lot of things in common actually with him. He's from, the Northern Illinois area and basketball. And,
You know?
yes, he's quite a guy. So that was really cool. That happened right off the bat, right after you moved to KL. And I guess you're in Vietnam, right?
Yes.
Right now?
Yes. And I have to say that Snow is the number one reason why I spent 6 months last year in KL. Don't tell him that. Because he opened up the city to me. He took me under his wing as a big brother.
Yeah.
And wow, what an amazing guy. What a character, what a personality. He's
Yeah.
not just a friend, but a big brother of mine. So yeah, he's special. And yeah, I spent 6 months in KL. And now I've been in Vietnam since last September, but I do go often to Kuala Lumpur. I might actually go next week for a weekend or so just to catch up with the boys. Always love, especially jumping in that pool behind me. That's a pool I stayed, not the pool, but the building I stayed 6 months. And the Twin Towers right here, just behind it, that's where Snow lives. So
Wow.
it's seriously, you gotta get yourself to KL, brother. I've been telling you we had this
I know you have.
We had a chat last year when I first arrived in KL. I was so excited. I showed you the apartment in the same building. And I said, brother, get on the plane. Yeah.
I know you did. I remember.
Yeah.
I wish I could move that fast, but I haven't been able to.
Put it out there. It's a matter of time. Yes.
It is. It is. It looks like a heck of a place. So.
Oh yeah. Not only the people, so you can enjoy an incredible quality of lifestyle for a fraction of what you're paying just to survive in the US or Canada or anywhere in the Western world for that matter.
Right.
Yeah. We can do an entire episode just on travel. Actually, me and Snow, we did a live recording in a studio back there a few times. So and we can do that again, me and you, another time. But for now, I want to talk about what's been cooking up for you. But before that, for people who don't know you, tell us a summary, a snapshot. Who's Randy as a person, as a man, as a human being? And we're going to talk about your business and all of that later on.
I would answer that by saying that I was extremely blessed growing up in the home and in the family, and with surrounding friends and in the town of Fort Dodge, Iowa, where I grew up. It was just wonderful. And when your dad's the sports writer, and you got the sports going there, your mom's the church secretary, you got some bases covered, and I look back and think about just how blessed I was with the way that I was raised and the values that were instilled upon myself and my 2 brothers, and my sister. And it was tremendous. And from, I as a young guy, I fell in love with this game of basketball, like I did all the sports, but there was something really special about the game of basketball for me. Maybe it was that first shot that I made when we all can barely get it up to the rim, and it rolled in, and just the feeling and all that behind that was phenomenal. I remember the day. It's a nice warm spring day. But I've got it dialed back to about at 8 years old. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that I'd go with my dad to work, and him going to work was going to the local games, and I'd go with him and sit with him as he kept score and monitored all the stats, and because he was the sports writer in town.
Wow.
And I observed a lot as a young kid, of coaches, of officials, of administrators, of teachers, and education, and the process of it, and the school itself, and the whole, you know, thing about competition and people getting fired up. Why would everybody come and fill that gym? Something must be important. But all of those things were pretty easy for me to observe and take in. And at a young age, I just knew that, man, there might be something in this game for me. And I remember asking my dad what the high school coach does for a job. Because I would go to their practices. We were real close friends, and still are, of the family of the high school coach. And he said that is his job.
Wow.
He's an administrator during the day, and he's the basketball coach in the afternoon, and games and stuff. And I thought, you get paid for this? This is unbelievable, I remember thinking. And so here I am at that young age, and I already know what I would like to do for the rest of my career. Now, it didn't work out that way, but for a long time it did. And I'm still heavily involved in the game, and doing a lot of things in and around players and coaches. But that's the way I grew up, and very fortunate, loved every second of it. But I went through just an amazing opportunity to coach college basketball. And for 20 years, I was a college coach. I was a college assistant at the Division I level, college head coach at the Division I level. Came within about that far in the 2000 Elite Eight of going to the Final Four and maybe winning the national championship.
Wow.
But a few years after that, things came to a skid because I'd made some pretty awful decisions.
Before that, what team were you coaching? You almost made it to
This was our team at Iowa State University.
Okay.
And we had won the 2000 Big 12 championship. We won the 2001 Big 12 championship, and got a chance to compete in. And there's nothing like the Elite Eight, because you're just a couple bounces away from going to the Final Four, which was one of my 3 goals I set when I was 20 years old.
What are some of the top players that you coached and ended up being in the NBA, for example?
Oh, there's so many of them. My gosh. There's got to be hundreds of them.
Name a few. 3 to 5 of them.
Well, you have a run of players that came through Kansas. Nick Collison and Kirk Heinrich, certainly, and there were great ones before those guys and great ones after. Oklahoma State had a whole bevy of players. Texas had a guy named, this was after I was there, but Texas had a guy by the name of Kevin Durant. And
really?
of course, our in-state rivals, Iowa, they had several players, not huge name players, but several players that went on to the NBA. But when you start talking about playing in the NCAA tournament, we played a really good Auburn team one year, and we were 1 year removed from Barkley, by the way. He had just got done playing the year before. We played Auburn in the NCAA tournament, missed him by a year.
Charles
Wish
Barkley?
we could have played against Barkley. Yeah.
Wow.
Reggie Miller at UCLA. I remember, this is before the 3-point shot. Okay. Reggie pulled up in front of Lute Olson. So he had to be about 30 feet away from the basket. I'll never forget it. Yeah, this was at UCLA with John Wooden at the game sitting across from us, which was about enough to blow my mind. I mean, this was my first college job. But you know, things like that were just, you know, just crazy, unbelievable. Reggie Miller, yeah. And yeah, just, you know, and of course we had guys, I mean, we had off our Arizona team, we had 5 guys that went on and played in the NBA, including Steve Kerr, Sean Elliott, Tom Tolbert, Judd Bushler, who got 2 rings with the Bulls. He and Kerr were together with the Bulls, and Anthony Cook, and then a ton of guys after I left. So yeah, just a lot. But you know, um, the times with them were really cool as I look back. The times where you have contact with them after the fact, when they've got into their own world as adults and you know, family men and professionally, and then down the road for me, then to meet up with those guys is really special. There's that bond, and there's kind of payment. I'll tell you, it's sort of an untold appreciation and respect that I always sense around my former players later on, when, you know, when they're older and you meet them and run into them, because, you know, when they're 19 and 20 and you are pushing them to levels they have never been pushed before, half of that doesn't make sense to them. They just think they're good enough to do it with what they've got. And I'm talking about your average college player, probably. The exceptional ones get it, okay? The Elliots and the Kerrs, those guys got it. They knew why they were pushed the way they were pushed, because they were leaders and they were going to be premier players in that program. And the other guys sometimes don't, and they kind of question it. But, you know, a good coach is able to push a player into areas of execution and excellence that they could never do on their own or never do with their buddies playing pickup ball. It takes a special coach in a program where those players have respect of their coach, and they will do, you know, what the coach prescribes for them in terms of physical conditioning, how long we're going to practice, how hard we're going to practice. Because when they start to see the results of winning and guys going to the NBA, then they start to figure it out. I see now that I've got a heck of an opportunity here. I'm going to do everything Coach Olson tells me to, because I get it now. But when guys are pushed beyond the areas they've ever been pushed before in their life, it's a real eye opener. We kid a lot with Sean Elliott. His first practice as a college player, we didn't think he was going to make it through practice. He was puking and he was heaving and he couldn't breathe, and he was like, oh, and he just looked like he, you know, he'd never played before. It killed him physically, that practice. Absolutely. And we had conditioned really hard that fall, but it was not like going up and down on that McHale Center floor for almost 3 hours like we did that day. But I've been with Sean and we've laughed about it. And he said, well, I had to get my butt going. I had to get in shape, because talent doesn't do it alone. And then, of course, he becomes an NBA All-Star and wins an NBA title with David Robinson and all those guys at San Antonio. And then he realized, I think in retrospect, which is cool to hear these guys say, in retrospect, Coach, I want to thank you for pushing me so hard. And what you guys did, you knew what you were doing. I didn't get it at the time. And that's cool to hear that they finally do get that, especially when they reach those, you know, those levels. And Steve's still coaching. Sean is Sean's a broadcaster for the San Antonio Spurs, so he's heavily involved in the game, and our other guys are too. Bruce Frazier, who was actually on our teams, didn't play in the NBA, but he's coaching with Kerr for the Warriors. He's been an assistant with Steve and won all those titles with Kerr.
Wow. So how easy is it for you to spot that, hey, this guy has what it takes to go to the NBA versus another one? Is it something special that you know it's instinctively, or is it something that you realize maybe after a few months?
Well, if you do your homework, I've always said this because when you're out recruiting, you see so much talent.
Mm,
But within the style of the game that's being played, which is usually a loosey-goosey, faster game, that's not what we have at the collegiate level. It's more controlled. There's so much more thinking that goes on. So you can see the athletic ability, but what you have to determine is this kid literally tough enough to be a star in our program?
mm,
And I've seen a lot of guys with immense talent that couldn't cut the mustard because their personality and their fabric wasn't that of toughness. And, one of the things I've learned from going through my adversities professionally and personally is that if you can't keep adversity in perspective and handle it with a response and not a reaction. Reactions are all about kind of blaming and saying this isn't my fault and this is on you, not me. A response is one that's very responsible, and if you need to take responsibility, you take responsibility. In an adverse situation, players who haven't been raised or played with high school coaches who were that way, it gets really hard for them now to come to college with all the other stuff that's going on. It's like a circus, right? You get to college, you're on your own. I mean, it's a whole new world. And if you don't have those things already as part of your MO, how you get along as a player, can you tough it through adversity and go through those hard practices and still maintain the responsibility that you need to? If you can, that's a good deal. Now you've got the talent and now you've got the mental capacity and the toughness to match any situation. That's a good combination. It's the guys who can't answer the bell when it gets tough who never make it. And we've all heard of a lot of great athletes that you just can't believe the kid didn't make it.
yeah,
Well, athletics is only part of it. You know, the mental to the physical is, some say 3 to 1, 5 to 1. I say it's a lot higher than that.
they say the physical aspect, sorry, the mental aspect, psychological aspect of
Yeah,
sport is like 90%. That's here. Because talent
no
is
question.
that's a time it doesn't, but who's tough enough, who wants it enough, who's willing to
Yeah,
sacrifice, go the extra mile.
no question.
Yeah, wow. Did
And
you have any athlete that you knew that he would make it, but because of a lack of ethic or whatever, distractions, ended up not making it? And you were surprised, hey, this guy didn't make it. Wow.
well, I tell you, I'm trying to think of one.
Without naming names. Okay, well, I'll put them on the
I mean, I've certainly experienced that. But I'll tell you, with our guys and I was at a lot of really, really outstanding places. We had, we had a first rounder and a second rounder on that 2000 team. Marcus Pfizer was the third pick, I think, in the draft that year,
wow.
and kind of an undersized post guy. But he was a phenomenal player. He went to Chicago, and then Jamal Tinsley had a 14-year career with Indiana Pacers and the Utah Jazz. Had a terrific career, and he was a guy that had to go to junior college to get his GED. I would say Jamal pretty much surpassed all odds. I mean,
Mhm.
if you talk about a guy who is not prepared to be a Division I athlete and have the Division I moxie and discipline, it wasn't Jamal, because his background didn't lend towards that. But I will always give him ultimate credit for just coming in line. We had he played for, and I worked for, a guy who was very demanding, but a heck of a basketball coach, Larry Eustace at Iowa State. And Jamal did a phenomenal job of figuring out, if he's going to make the NBA, he has to listen to and do, everything that is given to him, and he did. And here's a guy that in his payment in this kid's life, he was never required to be on time. I mean, you know, those types of things that we take for granted that are in a guy's DNA. But Jamal never went to high school. Okay. And he went to a junior college in California, and that's where our head coach found him. And so, but somehow he was able to muster up enough. I know his mother was phenomenal, and he's very close to her, and I'm sure she instilled a lot of great things for him. But his background would not lend to him being a first team All American and being a second round draft pick in the NBA. It just wouldn't. Now the talent, oh, ridiculous. I mean, just stupid. But we're not talking about that, right? We're talking about the rest of it. That's how I would answer your question. I think just because it was pretty amazing when you look back and think that he excelled the way he did. And there were a lot of things that weren't part of his DNA growing up, but he figured it out and he got it done. Thank goodness he did for our team, but thank goodness he did for himself. And he started a foundation, and he's done very well and has grown up a ton. And I'm just really proud of him. Oh man, what a great story.
Are you still in touch with your student, your athlete from back then?
Yes, yes. Not all of them. I try to pick up the phone regularly, and just I have numbers, or I'll call one of the guys on one of my teams and say, give me 3 numbers that you have, because I got to touch base with guys. And it ends up being the most rewarding, longest phone call that I make, because we get going on all kinds of directions. And you know, our team from Miami of Ohio, when we lost our when our 4-year-old Meredith died in November of that 1992 year, our team got together and dedicated the season to her memory. So that was a real, and brought her, or one of the players brought his uniform over to the house, and so that was her team, and that was real special. And so one of the things I hear from guys is, on that vein, they will say, listen, I've gone through a divorce, coach, and it was really painful, and I'm sharing my kids, or maybe I don't have my kids. And I hear them talk about the real difficult adversities that I call big hurts in life, because now they're not playing anymore, and they're not that student athlete. They're just the guy. And I've been told by some of the guys very directly that, coach, when I witnessed what you went through, he said, I often wondered how in the world you did it, and not having a clue as to how you could do it, or if I could do that, if that ever happened to me. And they'll say, but I've been through my own tough stuff, you know, so it's part of our life. And it's, if, and so anytime you get a chance to model to your players about things like that are that difficult, that are going to incur in their own life later on down the road, it's really one of the blessings. It's really one of the special things that's part of adversity, that they get to see that, because they're going to run into it, because nobody's exempt, right? We've talked about that a lot before. And so those are some of the special times with your guys that I've had.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, you have all these contacts, you know, we had this conversation before. Just invite them to share them on your podcast, you know, that would
Yes.
the moon in no time, because you have access to people that normally would not be able to get access to. You could have,
Right.
within 6 to 12 months, one of the most popular podcasts out there. I'm not just, you know, trying to sell you a dream. It's actually reality, because you have the access to these people. You have this connection,
Yeah.
this trust, this rapport.
Yeah.
Podcasting
Yeah.
is all about trust, or business for that matter, you know, life.
You know, you just reminded me of something. You know, we've got, from our Arizona team, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 guys that were on that team. 4 players on our Arizona roster that won a world championship in the NBA.
Wow. Which one?
Kerr has won multiple.
How many has he won?
As
More?
a coach,
Almost 10, right?
he yes, because he won
3 with the Bulls, 3 with the Lakers, 2 with the Spurs, not counting.
no, 3 with the Bulls, and I think 2 with the Spurs.
So that's 5.
He didn't play for the Lakers.
Oh, He did?
and then he's coached 3. So what's that? 5, 8.
8. Wow.
I think I'm missing one. But his assistant coach, Bruce Frazier, has won 3. So there's 12. Sean Elliott won 1. There's 13. And Judd Bushler for the Bulls won 2. That's 14, 15. So that's 15 world championships.
You can have 15 rings, on all of your ends.
Amongst 4 guys, all on the same team.
Wow.
In my first job of being a college coach. Now, how and working for Lute Olson, who is a Naismith, he's a Naismith Hall of Famer.
How was it working with Steve Kerr at the college level?
Well, I thought it was pretty phenomenal because I knew him as a really intelligent guy. He really had a way of.
He does seem very intense as a person.
Yes. Well, he was a no BS guy as a player. And I'll tell you what, I've seen him get after guys big and tall, and he could care less. All he wanted to do was win. And he was, the leadership, part of his role and responsibility with the team was leadership. And so I'm telling you, I've seen him go chest to chest with huge guys. He didn't care. He wanted to win.
Didn't he get
a fight
with Jordan and one of his first training at the Bulls?
Yeah. Jordan just hit him right in the face. Just smacked him. Just let off and let him go. Yeah. In one of their really competitive.
He respected him. Yes. Oh wow.
Yes. One of their really competitive practices, as Steve would call it. But if you looked at him, you could just tell the wheels turned a little bit different in that head of his than they did most guys I've ever coached. I could see a coach in him. I used to ask him, do you want to coach? And he would say, I wouldn't rule it out, but that's not something that I can see myself doing, is what he would say. And, one of his first jobs after getting done playing was he went into the front office with the Suns. And so he was a front office guy until he got the coaching bug. And when it bit him,
for Pop with the Spurs for a season or 2.
As a player, yes.
No, he was also as an assistant coach to Pop.
Oh, yes. Yeah, he spent a lot of time with Pop.
Yeah, even he was an assistant coach for a year or 2 before he went on his own. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, he did his due diligence for sure. Yeah, that's the kind of guy he is.
So was Steve Kerr the type of guy to show up, I don't know, even an hour before practice start at 6 o'clock in the morning at the gymnasium and start training, shooting and stuff?
Plenty early. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Plenty early. I have a memory that I think is so special that I've got to, and we may have talked about it before, but it doesn't matter. So yeah, I mean, Steve we always practiced in the afternoon, and Steve would always be there early and be prepared and be ready to go and bark at guys that didn't have their shoes tied and, the whole thing. But we had study table from 7:30 to 9:30 over in the library where all the guys had to be there. And after study table, it was not uncommon for he and Sean Elliott to mention to Coach Tom Billiter, who are my fellow graduate assistant, and I, hey, we're going to come over tonight. We're going to come over to shoot tonight. Okay. And it'd be Sean Elliott at one end. Now it's 10:30 at night. Nobody's, fans don't see this kind of stuff. Nobody knows this stuff, the kind of time these guys, put in. Not just those two. I mean, a lot of our guys, but it just so happened that one was on one end and one was on the other end on a very consistent basis. And we'd switch off. And I used to say the easiest job in the world, if a guy could get paid for it, is to rebound for Kerr when he's shooting threes.
Oh, wow.
Because you don't have to move. You just stand underneath the rim and catch it and throw it back to him. You don't have to do anything.
Wow.
So phenomenal shooter, phenomenal. And then Sean, working on perimeter stuff and drives and shots and free throws and whatnot on the other end. So Tom and I would switch, and Steve used to have a thing at the end of his workout, and he'd be drenched. And this is a long day he's been through, and it's whatever time now. It could be like 11 o'clock. And he had to make, his deal was he wanted to make 5 in a row from 5 different spots on the floor. Corner, wing, point, corner, or excuse me, wing and point. So he'd make 5 in a row from the corner. He'd go to the next spot. He'd make 5 in a row. This was always at the end of the workout. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I don't know how he can do this, because your legs go first physically, okay, which really affects your shot. And he would get stuck on a spot, and he'd get to 3, and then he'd get to 4, and then he'd miss, and he'd have to go then back to 0 and start at 0. I mean, we're talking about grueling, okay? And I remember one particular night where he was having a struggle. Oh, and I wanted so badly to say, hey, let's just cut our losses here, call it a good night. And you could never talk him into that. He would never do that. If he had to stay there until tomorrow, the next morning, and keep shooting. And he kept getting to 4, and then he would miss, kept getting to 4, and he would miss. And I saw him punt a ball. The great punter for the Raiders, when I was a kid watching football, NFL football, Ray Guy, and now they got the Ray Guy Award and all this stuff. He punted one that Ray Guy would love to be able to kick that far, way up in the upper rafters of McHale Center. He was so mad and just full of, he wanted to make that 5th shot. The next time he did, and then he finished out pretty good. But I'll never forget that. And you know what's interesting, Payman? People don't know this. Real basketball fans do. That Steph Curry is regarded the best 3-point shooter of all time in the NBA. But if you look at percentage 3-point shots given a minimum number of makes, he's not first, and he's not second. Steve Kerr is first in the history of the NBA in 3-point field goal percentage. 45.4. That's the best ever. A lot of people don't know that. They remember him as a good shooter, but not like the best percentage wise. Yeah. And that's making a 1 out of 2. That's pretty gnarly.
Wow.
And of course, we remember the one that he hit in Game 6, when they won, and where Jordan told him at the timeout, "You be ready, because when they come off me and double me like they do, I'm gonna look for you, and you better be open." And he did. Steve was open. Jordan hit Steve. Steve hit the shot. They went down, got a stop on the other end, got the rebound, and won the world title.
There's a beautiful video of that when they have like the celebration in Chicago the next day at the public.
Yes.
He said, kind of jokingly, Michael, I saved your ass. I bailed you out. You couldn't take the pressure. You were not ready. You sent me the ball, and I literally bailed you out. And it was like everybody
had to bail you out again.
Couldn't believe that he
Bail
was
you out again, Michael.
in front of Michael Jordan. Of course, it was joking, but it takes a lot of balls to that, Seriously.
Well, the humility of a guy not to try to beat a double team and go make a play to win a game. Yeah, he was just he was just so smart. Oh my gosh. We know he was a great player, but his mental makeup, as we learned with The Last Dance, the documentary, I mean, he had like they say, a mind like a steel trap.
Yeah.
Incredible.
For you, was it obvious from the first training that this guy's going to make it to the NBA, or is it something that you realized later on? And if there was a specific moment that made you, oh, this guy's going to make it, or was it something just progressive?
No, it certainly wasn't a thought of this guy's going to make it. I mean, he had to work, and fundamentally, Steve had to become so good because he really had a lack of athletic ability and quickness and speed. He had adequate. It was good. It was good enough for him to play in the NBA a long time, so it was good enough. But he didn't have the athletic ability that we had another point guard on that team, Kenny Lofton, and Kenny Lofton had just incredible athletic ability, speed, and quickness beyond what Steve had. Steve had more the mental capacity of how to play the game, but Kenny Lofton went and didn't play it in the NBA. He played Major League Baseball and what is one of the great base stealers in the Major League records. Yeah, that's how good an athlete he was.
Wow. Imagine.
So, So here I am, a young guy who's just out of a high school experience before I got that opportunity to go to Arizona. And I'm able to see and observe things like that. A Kenny Lofton out of Gary, Indiana, with this unbelievable athletic ability. He can do just about anything. And then a guy like Steve, who has good ability, but not great in terms of the physical skills, and to see how those two careers both were just really, Steve's was phenomenal, All-American, and he and Sean led the team to the 88 Final Four, and Kenny with what he did with his ability, and then went on to play in the minors. I mean, or not the minors, the majors, Major League Baseball. It was really, really cool to see that. I was in a laboratory of athletic excellence, and I didn't even know it. The things that I observed were phenomenal. What real great gifts for a young coach to be handed. It's very, very grateful to have a chance to go to Arizona with those guys.
Oh yeah, wow. Wow. Yeah, definitely. What a life. And then you said after that, life turned not for the best. Tell us about that.
Well, there's a couple chapters in that. The first chapter is an illness that we didn't know our kids had. 3 of our 4 children had, and it took our oldest and our third oldest daughter, who died from it very quickly. And when that became a part of my reality, I continued to do some really unproductive things, like working like way beyond hours wise and intensity wise what I should have been working. And I did it to soothe myself because it felt good to be in the office and work towards the next game, to where I
Right.
could occupy my mind and because I knew there was another world I'd return to that night. Alcohol became a real close buddy, and would spend a lot of time with that friend of mine. And that was also a place for me to catch a respite from the grief. And but I'll tell you, when we lost Natalie, our second daughter, I just I was hardly able to operate. Mentally, I was really nowhere. And I was really disconnected and shut off from the world. And I had just lost a job about 6 months earlier, so I was not in great shape at all. And I made some. I just really, the biggest thing that I chose to do was to not face the reality of what had happened. And it's no mystery that now, as a speaker and a coach and an author, I speak on those topics of overcoming adversity and resilience. But I can, because I can also talk to people about how not to overcome, grief and be resilient if you don't make the right decisions. The other decision I made, when the other two choices I made weren't enough for me to get through, I didn't think, was pornography. And pornography came at a time when I just selfishly felt I needed to be comforted, and viewing pornography and everything that goes with it was something that could allow me to escape. And that in time, it didn't work out for me worth a darn. Um, it was a really difficult period of 6 years where I led a secret life. I led a dual persona. I was the public coach at Iowa State, and I was also a guy that was just reaching for anything to soothe him, so he could stay on top of his game and just continue to support his family and be a father for his kids and a husband for his wife. But it became a legal issue, and when it became a legal issue, I knew that the consequences were going to be very difficult. But I made the choice to come forth willingly. When I was alerted to the fact by the feds that came to my office one day at Iowa State, that they were aware of some things I'd been doing online, and I gave it all up because I was so tired, and I knew what I was doing wasn't right, and I needed to change completely who I was. Um, and I did. It came at a huge cost because I lost this career that I fell in love with when I was 8. I ended up losing my marriage, um, my identity, um, and uh, it it in the end, as if the end is now, that there have been some phenomenal, just phenomenal silver linings in all of that. But boy, when you're in the middle of stuff like that, it's really, really, really hard, really difficult. And I was depressed. And I'll tell you what, for payment for quite a few months, I remember just pleading with God to let me replace my children in heaven and
Mm.
let them come back. They were each only 4 years old, and let them live the life that that they were born to live. And
Yeah,
there was no way to do that, but I wanted to. I would have done it in a heartbeat.
sure.
And I I sought out advice and the counsel of my senior pastor, David Staff, a dear friend. And I said, David, I don't know if I'm long for this life, man. I don't know if I can do this. And it was a pretty pivotal conversation in my life because he made me realize how proud my girls could be for me based on the decisions that I would make, even though I had made some really difficult ones, some poor ones. Um, and he framed it in a way that I knew that I had to stand up and be the man that I was created to be. And because God forgives those who sin, God gives for those who make those choices, those bad choices. And that I knew I had a lot. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I had a lot to give to this world beyond coaching basketball, because it was all coaching basketball and winning games. In time, I realized there was a lot more out there to do, from an earth standpoint, from a universe standpoint, from a what's the legacy of your life? What did you really do beyond these games? And it's been quite a journey through time to figure out that I am here to be transparent. And I wrote a book called Rebound Forward, all about that transparency. And I had to live in transparency. And I had to make that huge decision that I was going to not be the coach now. I was going to be the guy who was flawed, but who had a good heart, and he loves to help. And now my mission is to be able to connect with men who are stressed, who work too much, who are racked with addictions, who are making really, really poor decisions, and they're leaving their family in the balance while they go do this. And as I'm able to locate and identify these men and begin to work with them one-on-one, and then let other men know through the speaking I do around the country, it provides me an opportunity to save someone else of the pain that I endured and the losses that I endured. And if so, there is not a game I could win that would even remotely compare to this kind of work. I
Absolutely.
never would have said that back when I was coaching, but I can see that now.
Yeah,
And I'm sure there's been some maturity. There's been, once I was able to drop the ego that I'm not that guy anymore, and I'm here, to help others. And I love doing it. And it's the work I'm really proud of. And I do it every day. And so that's been awesome. That's been awesome.
a journey. Wow, what a journey. I do have a copy of your book. It's one of the only books I carry with me when I travel. I have your book, my book, and the $100 million offer by Alex Hormozy. These are the only books I carry with me. And I will be flying this,
That's an honor.
and I will take this book and finally start reading it and finishing it, because it's a long due. You sent it to me as a gift 2 years ago, and it's a precious gift that I've been carrying with me throughout. And I will finally start reading it. And yeah, what a story, my friend. What a story. You mentioned your two daughters being taken away by a disease. What that disease was?
What we never found out for sure, to be honest with you.
Oh,
We do know that that at 4 years of age was the time where they were afflicted with it, because our second oldest daughter, Claire, who's now 33, and doing great, she was afflicted with it too at the age of 4. So here's 4 girls right in a row, oldest, second oldest, third oldest. At when they each became 4 years old, they became afflicted with this. Now, fortunately for Claire, we lived in Orlando, near Orlando, Florida at the time, and so she was hospitalized 3 times at Arnold Palmer Children's Hospital, and they had some of the greatest doctors in the world in that facility. It's a form of rhabdomyolysis. It's got like 27 letters to it. It's 3 words, but even at that, when we lost Natalie, they still said, we're not sure if this is the disease or not. This is as close as we can get. I mean, it was really rare, really rare. We don't know how they got it. It wasn't genetic because we tested, everybody was tested. Yeah, it's just a mystery. And that's a hard one to swallow, especially early in grief when nothing makes sense. Nothing.
You know, losing one child at 4 is enough to destroy any man, but losing 2 childs in a matter of a few years, it's, you know, it's beyond. I can't find any words. I can only imagine. I can't even imagine the kind of pain that you must have gone through. Wow. Bless your heart that you're able to make it and become, and use that as a gift to share those gifts with others. As I say all the time, all the pain, all the heartbreak, tragedy, betrayals, all of that disease we go through, sure, there's a lot when we go to them, but then they become our story. Then our story becomes our gift. Then our gift becomes our duty and responsibility to share them with others. Back when we go into them, it certainly doesn't sound like that. It sounds like,
No, no.
what did I do to deserve this? Why? Where is God? Why? Which is completely understandable. When we take
Yes.
it back, this is one of the things that completely changed my life, is understanding the tremendous power of questions and asking the right question instead of asking disempowering question, asking empowering questions. Just, what is this trying to teach me? What is the lesson for me to learn to that? And when you look at things from this perspective, you see them for what they are: beautiful, powerful, impactful gifts, even though they may not look
Well,
like.
well, they are. And I can honestly, I mean, I can say that from a place of truth, that I can honestly tell you that I believe in what you just said. Yeah, there's a lot of cliches in the world of grief, and our good friend Heidi Dunstan is an expert on grief, and I've learned a lot from Heidi. And you know, she talks about how there's just so many kind of, things that people say because they think they're supposed to say. One of the things that I think is told a lot and is repeated often, but I think there's a lot to it, that we sometimes look at things that have happened to us, but they're really, if you think about it, they're things that happened for us. If we can mine, okay, like mining gold, if we can mine the gold out of an adversity that hurts so bad that you can't even imagine, and if you can just put it in the framework of it being done for me, okay, then it makes sense to me because of what I'm doing now. How would I ever have arrived at this kind of work and make the decision to do this without feeling like there was lessons that came out of the real difficult pain? It only makes sense. It only makes sense. And I'll tell you, maybe the most profound thing that I've ever heard in my life is David Staff told me. He said, instead of the question why, he goes, we're going to work at reframing what it is that you're hurting for. He says, because understand, we were not born and we were not made to understand many of the whys that are going to happen in our lifetime on earth. And
Wow.
I'd never heard that. I just thought, here, I mean, I'm these girls' father, and I couldn't keep them from from passing away right before our eyes. And what he said made so much sense, and it was really a soothing thing for me because wow, the fact that we don't have those answers. I mean, we all want answers. We're all about control. We're all about knowing why this happened and that happened. And when he said we're not made to know, I thought, I've never heard that, but I like that. That's good. What if I'm not made to know? That means we've got to still go on and live and you know, and be responsible and take care of our family and know that we didn't like what happened, but we're going to respond appropriately to it, hopefully. Um, and my goal, Payman, is to use my poor decisions and their ramifications as reason for other men to not make those same choices, so that they don't have to, you know, incur the kind of pain that I did. It just didn't stop. I didn't think it was ever going to stop, and I just feared for the two girls that we had, but they ended up toughing it through, and we're very blessed to have them, and they're doing wonderful.
Happy to hear that. Wow. Wow. So now tell us all of these highs of working with extreme professionals and having the joys of seeing some of them reaching the highlight, the pinnacle of their trade in basketball, so Sean Kerr and Steve Steve Kerr and Sean Elliott and others, and then the lowest of the lows of losing your two daughters, losing your marriage, your career, basically identity. How are you now putting all of that together? What are you working on? Tell us about the impact. How are you using those gifts and sharing those gifts around you and around the world?
Well, before I do that, I just have to say that the big consequence, one of the big consequences of my actions that I just got done telling you about, was that I ended up doing 2 years in federal prison.
Mm.
And the strangest thing happened. The judge, the day he sentenced me, recommended that I go to a particular facility, a medium security federal prison in North Carolina. And I thought that was the dumbest decision ever. Why would a guy want to go that far? That's from Iowa, and he can't see his family and the whole thing, right? Well, I wasn't in charge. Okay, I still was full of myself, and I thought I was in charge. Well, what he did is he thought that this treatment program in North Carolina would be able to, if I would surrender to it, I would be able to turn my life around because of their program. And when he recommended me, even though there was a 10-year waiting list, I was allowed to get in immediately. And I served my 2 years in their 2-year program to the tune of over 2,400 hours that I got to be in treatment, in groups, in one-on-one sessions, reading, dialoguing, journaling, writing down all of my history, everything, looking at it at my life and my decisions and what I had done from every possible angle. And it saved me. It saved my life because I realized 6 months in, when they broke me hard after 6 months. And because I was so defensive and didn't think I should be there and the whole thing. But when I did, I was able to, they taught me a phenomenal thing, Payman. It's called the language of responsibility.
Mm.
I said, one of your problems is you don't speak like someone who's very responsible. And they taught me the words and how to talk from coming from a person who is taking responsibility. It's called the language of responsibility. I learned it, never had heard of it before. That's one of the things I learned. They talked to me about what transparency was, not just there in their treatment program, but when I got out and maybe was being judged by people, or I couldn't do things that I thought I should be able to do, and and to be transparent. And I started to write my book while I was in prison, and really wrote over 300 typewritten pages while I was in prison that I sent home. About half of that or so probably worked its way into the book. So what I'm doing now, and there's a precursor to that that's really important for me to say this, because I owe everything to the authorities. I owe everything to the feds. I owe everything to Judge Longstaff. I owe everything to the man who ran this program at Butner, North Carolina, Dr. Hernandez, who asked me the second day I was there, you have to make a big decision. You're either going to be here to become a better criminal or to become a better person.
Wow.
I said, Dr. Hernandez, I choose the latter. And had I not been there and gone through that program, I can't quite say what I'd be doing right now. I don't know. Nobody does. But what I do know is that I've given my heart over and my resources over and my ability and my energy over to the idea of being a spokesman for people who either are making the same mistakes that I made and what it caused, or they're going to somewhere down the road in their life. And to hand over all of the pride and things that I had was difficult at the time, but now I see that it was part of a bigger picture. So the work I'm doing now is in direct relationship to the gift that I received by being able to go to that treatment program. What I also didn't know when I got there is that there were 8 doctors and treatment specialists, world-class doctors in their field and treatment specialists. I didn't know this. I just thought they were, local people, until I found out their genius, until they started working with me, and I knew that they were so good. And you can't not be transparent around doctors that are that good, because they will read right. They'll see right through you. They can read you like a book. And I learned a lot from them, and I learned to be transparent. And it came at quite a price emotionally and physically, because they just broke me. But it's a brokenness that I needed to witness, and I needed to stay broken. And I work so hard every day to stay in that state of being broken, because when we are sinful, we are broken, and all we can do is to go to our Maker and and ask for forgiveness, and then do our absolute best that we can do the next day. So that's a lot for me to say, but I to even talk about what I'm starting to do now out there as a speaker and a coach and an author. It all comes from the unbelievable gift I was given by those people. And I would be remiss if I put any of that on me, and because none of it came from me. It came from that experience.
Absolutely.
Made all the difference.
Yeah. I remember you mentioned a doctor, a lady that was one of the main reasons that changed your life and saved your life. I think it was Dr. Amy, if I remember correctly.
Her name is Dr. Lacey
Lacey.
Frazier.
Are you
And
still in touch with them? With them and the other doctor you mentioned earlier? That at that
what about them?
Are you still in touch with them? If yes, would love for you to
Oh,
meet. It would be good to catch up with them, thank them, and who knows, invite them on your podcast.
I would say that yes, of all of them, I have contacted one of them. I wrote a series. Once I got home, I wrote a series of letters about once a month for several years to Dr. Frazier, and she asked if I would do that so that she could witness how my life was going, what decisions I was making that maybe weren't good. See, and most of it's just that crazy thinking. It's that cognitive. And so I did, to keep her in touch with how I was doing. And she had meant more to me than anybody in that program, because she was hardest on me, to the point where one day in a very critical session, she said, from this day forward, Mr. Brown, if you elect to stay as a volunteer in this program, you will not utter the word coach again. And when she took that from me, I mean, those were like fighting words. Now, I'm not going to in a prison stand up and try to be violent with anybody. That's just not my making. But I'll tell you, I was as angry as I've ever been in my life, and as close as I was to doing something in a physical realm that I would have certainly regretted for the rest of my life. But she had a way of pushing my buttons, and she was brilliant that way. She pushed me farther than I ever thought I could be pushed. Now, isn't that interesting? Because earlier at the beginning of this conversation, we talked about how my players would come back and say, Coach, I understand why you pushed me so hard. I didn't understand it before. I just thought it was so mean and so personal that you were doing that. But now I get it. I see it now. And so, boy, if that's not a full circle story. And I was so indebted to her support and her ability to really be there for me while I was at Butner. And boy, I tell you what, Payman, when we reconnected, oh man, it was so powerful that I got to tell this person outside of a prison setting. I got to tell it was person to person. It wasn't inmate to superior,
How did
right?
you
It
do
was
that?
a
A
different
phone call
deal.
or in person?
It was a phone call, and I
Okay.
hope to meet in person sometime. But boy, she's so insightful and brought up things that about the experience I didn't even think about at the time. But man, I'll tell you, she is doing great work herself, and she's a coach now and working with people that have a variety of issues that she works with, but she's doing great work. And to be able to talk to her as a civilian and not a superior was a real joy, because I felt like I could talk with some freedom. But and I wanted to tell her how much just the insane respect I had for her and how much I appreciated what she did for me in a way that I wasn't able to do when I was in prison. So that meant everything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She's one of your guides in this lifetime. I can see
Yes,
I can see that.
yes, yes. And I hope to do the same, type of thing for a lot of men, and women, but mostly men, that have basically hit an obstacle in life and work's not fulfilling anymore, and they just don't, their family, to be around their family is just okay instead of being great. Um, knowing that, having that moment where they say, "Hey, is this really all there is to life? Is this all there is? Does it end here or does it get better?" I always envisioned it was going to be, and mental health in our country the way it is, people, if they start to get down on what's going on in their life and get down on themselves in particular, depression's a brutal disease, brutal. And I'm certainly no doctor, and it will never be my intention to try to help someone get out of that. That's for the therapist and the doctors. But in my own way as a coach, I can lead them to where they need to go, and so I can kind of be Lacey Frazier now, and they can be me, and I can give back in that way.
Indeed, now
Yes,
as I said, life is a school. We come here to grow, become better, wiser, but then share those gifts. Now it's your turn to share your gifts, your wisdom, your
yes.
knowledge around you and around the world to inspire others, other men. You work with men. Tell us more about what you're doing. How are you sharing your gifts?
It's through a variety of ways. It is certainly through speaking when you're on the stage and you have a captive audience. That is a real powerful way. And I can tell sometimes just by looking at in a set of eyes during my talk, I can tell when I've hit a point with someone. It's pretty phenomenal when that happens. But that's one way. Certainly, social media is a way that we all sort of let the world know the kind of work that we do. I'm on just an awful lot of podcasts, and obviously really appreciate having been able to air my story with you so many times, and but podcasts have been a great way. I love to write, so I've written my own book, Rebound Forward. I wrote in your book, chapter in your book, and then in 2 other books I've written also. And a presence online, with a website and with resources. And I think it's a numbers game for me. I
Mm.
want to touch as many sets of eardrums as I can. And they've got to hear it first, and then they've got to decide, even, I mean, if it's as convicting as I think it is to a lot of men, they still have to make a decision payment whether they're going to put action to the realities of their life. And a lot of them don't. They continue to hide. And I said willingly, and I'll always say it, that part of my transparency is telling people for 6 years, nobody had a clue I was accessing pornography late at night and burning the midnight oil and wasting sleep and at the same time, pornography produces victims. It does. To make pornography, okay, produces victims. And there was a whole chain that I had to learn when I was at Butner about how about the whole sex trafficking world, unfortunately, that we live in, but how victims are created. And I had to realize that I had a hand in victimizing a lot of people just because pornography, hey, if there's no demand for pornography, nobody's making it, right? If there is a demand, then people's lives are being ruined. And that was a tough one to swallow, because when they finally got that through to me, I was a wreck for a couple days because I realized what I had done. And I didn't before. I just thought, hey, a movie's a movie, a magazine's a magazine, and the computer's a computer.
So you were
So
accessing pornography were at home or at your office and school?
at home, and then if I traveled, I had a laptop with me,
Ah, okay.
you know. So
So they were monitoring you?
they got to the point where they did, because I got to the point where all I enjoyed doing, addiction is such a crazy thing.
Yeah.
It takes you in and out of different ways to release the dopamine in your brain to get the high of that we do in a lot of different ways, right? In pornography, it's a brain high.
Mhm.
And but when those things wear off, which they can wear off, you have to seek other ways. Well, for me, it was a chat room, and as impersonal as that sounds, to be in a room typing on a computer back and forth with other people who you don't know who they are because you don't see their face. They just tell you who they're purporting to be, who they want to be in this little, fantasy. And I'm in there typing away, not knowing that what I was doing could be deemed as illegal.
Ah,
And I got called in one night after I had got off a chat room, and the fella that called the 1-800 exploited children's hotline, um, thought that I had said too much or been out of line with what I was thinking and saying. And he called them, and then at that point they were alerted, and they began to follow my actions on the computer. And then two
wow.
plus two equals four. And they walked into my office, and I wasn't quite prepared for
Sure.
that.
You men-
But that was obviously one of the things I thought at the time was something that happened to me and against me, not happened for me. But in time, we figure these things out.
yeah. You mentioned you got
So
into alcohol and then pornography. Did you get into drugs?
no,
Okay.
no, no. Fortunately, I never did.
Okay. All right. Wow. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, overworking it can really cripple you.
Oh yeah.
It can, because it owns you. And even if you're doing it to stay away from the pain, you can be causing a lot of pain in your life by just being too in there too much, doing too much traveling. I never turned down time to travel because I enjoy traveling. It allowed me to kind of get out of my normal everyday, and it really stinks to say that, because what I'm saying is so I could stay away from my home and my family. And that's hard to hear myself say that, but it's reality. It's what I did. So
Awesome.
one of the prices.
Absolutely. Listen, beautiful, powerful, heartfelt conversation. Let's call it a night for today. And let's do a game where we game 6 in a couple of weeks. If someone
Let's
wants to
do it.
with you, what's the best way to do so?
My website is Coach RB for Randy Brown, coachrb.com. And on there, you can contact me from the website. And I would love to hear from a lot of folks that hear this podcast. There's never been such a thing where I haven't returned a piece of mail or an email or a text message, and I would love to, especially if I can sense somebody is hurting. And a lot of times, what I end up doing is, once we have some conversation over the text, we're able to have a Zoom call together, and if there's an issue I can help with, I'm more than willing to help anybody with anything in the realm of what I've gone through and can help them with.
Absolutely.
Love to hear from folks. Love it.
Okay, we'll put that in the show note. What is again the title of your book?
It's called Rebound Forward. Rebound from life's most devastating losses and stay in the game. And it's Amazon's easiest way to go about getting it. And I have two really two of the guys I respect the most from all of my years in athletics, college athletics, and Kirk Ferentz, the football coach at the University of Iowa, who I respect. He's at the top of the heap of coaches I respect. And also Lon Kruger, a longtime coach, took, I think, 5 different teams, programs to the NCAA tournament. Both of those have a quote that they just so graciously gave me for the book, and I put them both on the cover. I thought they were so good.
Yeah,
And those mean a lot to me. And so I would obviously be I'd be thrilled to know that somebody heard your podcast and went ahead and got the book through Amazon. And then please, folks, anybody that when you read a good book, or if you get a chance to read Rebound Forward, I'm a keeper. I get books and I outline them and I keep them, and I think I'm going to always access them all the time. I've started to give away my books. I mean, once I've read it, and sometimes I'll take notes of my notes so that I have a remnant of the real, big nuggets in the book. But I think passing books off to other people is a tremendous thing to do.
yes,
They certainly don't help anybody else if they're sitting in our bookshelf. I know that. And so I've started to do that. And I learned that from a couple coaches that I know. And I thought it was a brilliant idea. And
absolutely.
just pass it on, pass the knowledge on, the opportunity to learn, and maybe keep yourself from making that crucial, really crucial decision at some point and
Absolutely.
change your life.
Absolutely. Give me 10 seconds. 1 sec. Oops. I went to look for your book. I know I have it somewhere. I couldn't find it, but as soon as I find it, I will put a picture of it online for people, because it's a beautiful book. And once again, thank you for sending it as a gift. That's why I carry it with me all the time. It's a precious gift from a precious friend. So thank you, brother.
Absolutely, Payman.
Yeah. And yeah, listen, absolutely love talking to you all the time. We can't wait till we actually finally meet in person, hopefully in Kuala Lumpur sometime in the near future.
Yes.
You and Snow and all the boys, at that
Yes.
floor of that Marini lounge, smoking cigars and whiskey and chit chatting, you know. Totally, my brother.
Well,
Listen, I salute you. You're a true leader with a heart, one of the best, most incredible, truly goosebump-inducing stories I've been blessed to showcase in my podcast in the last 3.5 years and almost 350 episodes, always top of the line. And a dear friend
wow.
as well. I still can't forget the phenomenal gift you sent me last year through Snow. And wow, what a gift. I'm actually
Yes.
going to NKL next week and make sure Snow keeps it in good condition.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
No, you're a special friend. I appreciate you a lot.
Means a lot to me from the heart, my friend.
Yes.
Always looking forward to chatting with you, catching up with you, and any way, shape I can help you shine brighter than you're currently shining or win. I'm here for you. I'm cheering for you. I believe in you. I trust you. And I know you will get your gift. You've been blessed with phenomenal gifts to inspire, empower, and uplift others around you and around the world. So I'm all
Yes,
here for you, my brother.
that's my goal every day.
Take
A
care, my
lot
friend.
of people out there. Yeah, thanks, Payman.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it, bud.
Shining your light, and God bless, and talk to you very soon for game 6 or game 7 next time.
It'll be game 6.
All right, let's do that in 2 weeks' time. All right, my
2
friend.
weeks, game 6.
Yeah, take care.
All right.
Cheers.
All right. Thanks, Payman. Bye.